My name is Maria Caldwell. I'm 36 years old. And this is the story of how I lost my marriage to a lie, and took back my dignity with nothing but the truth and a man who never forgot me. It started on a Friday night. Charleston was glowing under the soft burn of amber street lamps, and I was sitting in my car, parked just outside a bar called Ruck & Wine. It was one of those sleek downtown spots with reclaimed wood, craft cocktails, and glass windows so spotless you could see people's lives play out like a show. Inside was my husband, Tyler. And across from him sat a woman in a red silk dress. Her hand was on his thigh. His fingers were in her hair. I didn't need confirmation. I didn't need my best friend Sophia to whisper into the phone that she saw him being intimate. I could see everything from where I sat. That red dress? I'd seen it before, on Lindsay. She was new to Tyler's company. I met her once at a work event. She complimented my bob haircut and said I looked graceful. I remember smiling at her, offering her champagne. Never once imagining she'd be the woman to destroy my home. I didn't go inside that night. I didn't scream or throw things. I drove home with the windows rolled down, my heart trying to claw its way out of my ribs. The next morning, I waited until Tyler had poured his coffee. I stood there in the kitchen and asked him one question: "Do you have something to tell me?" He looked at me, blank. And then, when I said, "Red dress. Ruck & Wine. Her hand. Your hand." That was when he smiled. Not the kind of smile you give when you're happy, but the smirk of a man who knows he's been caught and thinks he can still win. "She's just a colleague," he said. We were talking strategy. And when I didn't flinch? When I didn't even blink? His tone shifted. "It's not serious. You and I haven't felt close in months. Don't you feel that too, Maria?" No. I didn't. But I didn't say that. I was too stunned. That's when he said her name, Lindsay, and that she was 24. A marketing assistant. A cheerleader in college. "Vibrant," he said. "She makes me feel alive again." 3 weeks later, he texted me in the middle of a project meeting, "Can you come home?" I already knew. He stood in the living room when I arrived. No suit. Just jeans and a blank stare. "She's pregnant," he said. He didn't apologize. He didn't grovel. He just said it. 8 weeks. That's what he told me. "Are you sure it's yours?" I asked. "She says it is." And I just nodded. Not because I believed it, but because the alternative, that he left me for a maybe, was even more pathetic. Tyler moved out the following Sunday. He said Lindsay needed him. That she deserved clarity. That I was strong and could handle it. And just like that, I was alone. The first mediation was surreal. Tyler walked in like we were splitting a grocery bill, not 7 years of marriage. Lindsay came too, her belly just starting to show. She smiled at the receptionist. She waved at the mediator. She even had the audacity to bring someone with her. A man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, neatly groomed. Wore a slate gray shirt, sleeves rolled up just enough to show quiet confidence. His name? Jace Stanford. Tyler introduced him as my old college buddy. That name, Jace, jogged something in the back of my mind. I remembered Tyler mentioning him years ago. Someone from his fraternity. They'd done road trips and bar crawls together. Jace had moved to Seattle and worked in logistics. So what was he doing here now, at our divorce mediation? He didn't speak much. Just sat across from me, scribbling notes. Lindsay wouldn't look at him. Every time he got near, she suddenly had to take a phone call. Adjust her coat. Fix her makeup. Anything to not meet his eyes. I noticed. And the more I watched, the more I realized, this man had a story he wasn't telling. During the break, I stepped outside into the hallway, needing air. That's when I heard it. Lindsay's voice, low and frantic, just behind the vending machines. He doesn't know. Just a few more weeks and it'll all be handled. I froze. A man answered, quieter, but with unmistakable emotion. Lindsay, I can't keep lying. This is spinning out of control. I turned and walked toward the elevator before they saw me. But inside, my heart was on fire. Something wasn't right. And I was about to find out just how deep this betrayal went. The second mediation brought clarity. Tyler and Lindsay were late. Jace was already there. He stood by the window, sipping coffee like he hadn't slept all night. I approached him. I never thanked you, I said, for being here. Not many friends would go through this. He gave me a weak smile. Yeah, sometimes I wonder why I'm even here. Did you know Lindsay before Tyler did? I asked. He turned to me slowly. Before him, yeah. He hesitated. We used to see each other. Briefly. It wasn't casual. But it wasn't forever either. At least, I didn't think it was. And then? I pressed gently. She ghosted me. No warning. Then I hear she's dating Tyler. Months later, she pops back up, says she's pregnant, and starts texting me again. He pulled out his phone. I saved everything. I didn't know what to do. There were dozens of messages from Lindsay. I don't know if it's yours. I don't want to ruin his life. But I'm scared. What if the test doesn't say what he wants? Then a video. Lindsay, sitting on a couch, hand on her belly. The doctor says it's a boy. I think he has your chin, Jace. I stared at the screen. Then at Jace. You've had this all along? He nodded. I didn't want to believe it. But I can't lie to him anymore. Then don't, I said. But we need to be smart. Smart? There's a baby shower next weekend, I said. Willow and Pine. A big announcement. We're not going there to hurt anyone. But we are going there to tell the truth. Jace looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the same fire burning in his chest that was now roaring in mine. He nodded. And in that moment, I realized something profound. I wasn't just going to get justice. I was going to get clarity. And they were going to get the truth, whether they wanted it or not. Jace didn't call the next day. Or the one after that. And I didn't push him. Some truths take time to find their voice. But when he finally did reach out, his message was just 5 words. If you go, I'll go. That was all I needed. The days leading up to the party were a blur of preparation, not for confrontation, but for clarity. I wasn't looking to make a scene. I wasn't interested in revenge. I wanted truth, laid out like clean linen after a storm. I gathered everything. Screenshots of Lindsay's texts to Jace. The ultrasound video. Her comment about the baby having his chin. Dates and locations of hotel stays. Even call logs showing late-night conversations between them, all during the critical conception window, when Tyler was out of state at a conference. I reached out to one more person, Kendra, Lindsay's half-sister. We weren't close, but she once cried in the break room at my old architecture firm. Said Lindsay had a habit of turning men into puppets. We met for coffee. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I'm not asking you to take sides, I said. But I think your sister is manipulating 2 men into fatherhood. And one of them has a right to know. Kendra didn't argue. After a long pause, she said, Lindsay sent me the ultrasound. Said, thank God it looks like Jace. If it had Tyler's nose, I'd be screwed. She laughed. Then she showed me the message. It was all there. The smug caption. The sonogram. The arrogance. Can you send it to me? I asked gently. Kendra hesitated, then nodded. If this stops her from ruining another life, maybe it's time she's seen for who she really is. Saturday arrived. The sky hung heavy with thick, gray clouds, as if even nature sensed something was about to break. I dressed carefully. Not to impress. Not to seduce. Just to feel strong. A deep blue fitted dress, minimal jewelry, black heels. My hair curled gently, framing my face the way I liked it when I used to feel like myself. In my hand, a folder. Slim. Clean. Loaded with reality. Jace met me in the parking lot. He looked sharp. But there was no bravado in his eyes. Just a solemn readiness. A man walking into truth, not triumph. We didn't need to say much. We were aligned. Quiet warriors stepping into a room full of illusions. The event host smiled brightly at the entrance. Welcome. Are you on the guest list? Yes. Maria Caldwell. This is Jace Stanford. The recognition on her face was subtle, but there. She led us toward the back room, a private area decked out in silver and blue, with pastel balloons spelling Welcome Baby M. The room buzzed with clinking champagne glasses and low laughter. And then I saw them. Tyler, smiling like he'd finally figured out happiness. Lindsay, radiant in a fitted cream dress, hand perched on her bump like it was her crown. They didn't notice us at first. But then Tyler's eyes landed on mine. The moment stretched. His smile faltered. Lindsay followed his gaze. The air seemed to suck itself out of the room. Maria? Tyler stepped forward, blinking like he wasn't sure I was real. What are you? Hello, Tyler, I said calmly. Congratulations. Lindsay's eyes darted between us. This really isn't the place. I disagree, I interrupted, lifting the envelope. If this event is about beginnings, then it should begin with truth. Jace stepped forward and placed his own folder on the table beside the gift pile. I opened mine. These are the messages Lindsay sent to Jace, I said clearly, placing the pages down one by one. Expressing doubts about the child's father. Tyler frowned. What? This, I continued, is the sonogram. With a caption sent to her sister that reads, "Thank God it looks like Jace." If it had Tyler's nose, I'd be screwed. I turned the page. This is a video Lindsay sent Jace after her ultrasound. She says the baby boy has your chin. She wasn't talking to you. Jace pulled out his phone. Played the video. Lindsay's voice filled the room. The doctor says it's a boy, and I think he has your chin, looks like you. I'm scared, Jace. What if Tyler finds out? You could have heard a pin drop. Tyler's face drained of all color. He gripped the edge of the table like he needed it to stay upright. His wine glass tilted and shattered on the floor, unnoticed. Lindsay grabbed his arm. Tyler, this isn't what it looks like. They're twisting things. This was private. I was just joking. Joking? I repeated, eyes locked on her. While pregnant? With your ex? At the exact time of conception? Her face contorted. There's no proof it's his. There is, Jace said. Hotel receipts. You were with me when Tyler was out of town. You told him you were exhausted that night. Tyler took a step back. He looked like a man who'd just found out the floor he was standing on was made of paper. Lindsay, he said, voice hoarse, is it true? She didn't answer. Just looked at him like a child caught stealing from a candy jar. No defiance. Just fear. And silence. Guests began leaving quietly, their smiles faded, their champagne flutes abandoned. Lindsay looked around, seeing her kingdom collapse. She grabbed her purse and walked out without another word. And just like that, she was gone. The room emptied quickly after that. Just me, Jace, and Tyler. Tyler sat down, slowly, like his knees no longer had strength. His hands trembled. He buried his face in them. I thought I was starting over, he whispered. Turns out, I was just being played. I didn't gloat. I didn't lash out. I just stood there, still and steady. After everything, I didn't want his pain. I just wanted my peace. He looked up, eyes red. Maria. I know I don't deserve anything from you. But, is there any chance we could fix this? I paused. Sat down across from him. What do you want to fix, Tyler? The years I was there and you didn't see me? Or the future you tried to build with someone who never loved you? He didn't answer. Because he couldn't. I'm not angry anymore, I said quietly. But I'm done trying to be chosen by someone who never chose me when it mattered. He nodded. Slowly. Brokenly. And then he asked the question I knew was coming. Is there someone else? I held his gaze. Yes. His face crumpled. Who? Ryan. Ryan Reeves. The look on his face said everything. He remembered Ryan. My college what if. The one I never got to explore because Tyler had stepped in first. We reconnected at a conference earlier this year, I added. He moved back to Charleston in February. Tyler leaned back, eyes glassy. Are you happy? I'm at peace. That answer seemed to cut deeper than anything else. He nodded again, then whispered, I hope you stay that way. I stood, smoothed my dress, and walked to the door. But before I left, I said one last thing. Tyler, I hope you learned something from this. Not about me. About yourself. About the difference between real love and convenient validation. And then I left him, alone, surrounded by shredded ribbons and empty wine glasses. But for the first time in months, I felt whole. Not because I'd won. But because I'd chosen truth. The silence after that night felt different than all the silences that had come before. It wasn't the kind of emptiness that follows betrayal, the kind that buzzes in your ears and makes your own home feel haunted. It wasn't the numbing quiet of heartbreak. No, this silence was peaceful. Like walking out of a burning building and realizing the air is safe to breathe again. After the party at Willow and Pine, I didn't hear from Tyler for a while. Not directly. But word travels, especially in Charleston's tight-knit professional circles. People talked. They whispered about the spectacle. About Lindsay's retreat to Eugene, Oregon. About Tyler's sudden transfer request to Raleigh, North Carolina. He left town like a man trying to outrun the echo of his own name. And I stayed. Not to revel. Not to gloat. But because Charleston was mine before it ever belonged to him. I had built a life here, a real one. With work that mattered and friendships that were honest. I wasn't going to let a failed marriage exile me from my own roots. 3 weeks later, a slim envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was a handwritten card. I've started healing. Thank you for letting me hit bottom. Without that moment, I'd still be living a lie. Tyler. I stared at the note for a long time. Not because I missed him. But because I finally understood something crucial. I had spent so long trying to protect our image that I forgot to protect myself. The truth didn't just set him free, it unchained me too. And then came Ryan. We hadn't spoken much since the party, but he'd texted me the next morning, if you're okay, I'd like to talk. No expectations. Just honesty. I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe tucked away behind the old French Quarter. No frills. Just good coffee, low lighting, and the comfort of anonymity. He walked in wearing a gray sweater and jeans. Same warm smile. Same steady gaze. The kind of man who doesn't flinch when the air gets heavy. I read about the party, he said, sliding into the seat across from me. I sighed. Of course it got around. He chuckled softly. You shut down a baby shower with facts. That's local legend now. I smiled, for the first time in what felt like forever, with no bitterness behind it. I didn't do it to make headlines. I know, Ryan said. That's why I'm here. We talked for 3 hours. About everything. About how he'd moved back to Charleston to be closer to his daughter, Ellie, who lived with her mom on the east side of town. About how we almost dated in college, before Tyler came along. About how we both had spent far too much time prioritizing people who didn't value us. By the end of that coffee, I knew something important. I wasn't just healing. I was ready to live again. We took it slow. Ryan respected that. He never tried to step into a space I wasn't prepared to share. Instead, he built his own next to mine. We went to farmers' markets on Saturdays. Cooked pasta while Miles Davis played in the background. On Sundays, when Ellie stayed with him, he'd bring her over and she'd color in my sketch pads while I reviewed architectural models. The first time Ellie asked, "Do you know how to make crepes?" and I said no, she shrugged and said, "That's okay. I can teach you." And she did, a flower all over my dress, Nutella on the counters, and joy in every corner of my kitchen. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't romantic in the movie montage kind of way. But it was real. It was mine. Meanwhile, Jace stayed in touch. We spoke occasionally. He moved to Oregon, not to be with Lindsay, but to co-parent responsibly. He told me over the phone one evening. I don't love her. I never did, not in a way that deserved a future. But that baby, Miles, he deserves a truth I never had. And I respected him for that. He told me Lindsay didn't fight it. Maybe she was tired. Maybe guilt finally outweighed her pride. Whatever it was, Jace filed for paternity testing, and it confirmed what we already knew. Miles was his. Tyler never responded publicly. I don't think he had it in him. But Jace told me Tyler sent him a private message once. Take care of him. I couldn't do what you're doing. It didn't excuse everything. But it was something. Months passed. Spring crept into Charleston like a soft secret. Blooming magnolias. Rain on rooftops. Quiet evenings where I'd sit on the porch with Ryan, sipping wine, no longer haunted by questions like, why wasn't I enough? Because I finally understood. I was always enough. Tyler simply wasn't capable of recognizing a woman who stood beside him as an equal, not a prop. And Lindsay? She wasn't some mastermind villain. She was just a girl who chased what she thought was status, only to discover that love built on deception doesn't hold. One night, as Ryan and I planted lavender in the tiny backyard garden of our shared home, he said something that stayed with me. You know, he murmured, brushing dirt from my cheek, you didn't just walk away from a lie. You walked into your own story. He was right. People ask me if I ever wanted revenge. If I wanted Tyler to suffer. If I wanted Lindsay to crawl back and beg for forgiveness. But the truth is, I didn't. Because healing isn't about watching someone else fall. It's about choosing not to fall with them. It's about building something better, even if you have to start from scratch. And I did. Next spring, Ryan and I are getting married. Nothing fancy. Just a small backyard ceremony with string lights, wildflowers, and Ellie walking me down the aisle because she insisted, Dad can't have all the fun. I've never been more certain of anything. Because this time, I'm not choosing a future based on fear or validation. I'm choosing peace. And truth. And a man who never needed to lie to keep me. People sometimes message me after hearing the story. They say, Maria, you got your revenge. But they're wrong. I didn't get revenge. I got free. The day Ryan and I moved in together was quiet, uneventful, and perfect. No grand speeches. No dramatic suitcase drop-offs. Just him, Ellie, and a golden retriever named Theo who liked to steal my socks and nap under my drafting table. We didn't decorate all at once. We did it room by room. On Sundays. Over coffee and slow jazz. It was intentional, like our relationship. Nothing rushed. Nothing forced. That's when I realized how different love felt when it wasn't a performance. Tyler used to buy me flowers when he messed up, roses wrapped in apologies and tied in guilt. Ryan brought me sunflowers just because they reminded him of my laugh. It was small, but it mattered. Every now and then, I'd catch myself drifting, wondering if Tyler ever truly loved me or if I'd just fit into his life plan. The more I reflected, the more I understood. Tyler loved who I was on paper, stable, supportive, accomplished. He loved how I made him look. He never really saw me. He never really tried. And I had to own that I stayed too long trying to earn love from someone who never knew how to give it. But I wasn't that woman anymore. One rainy afternoon, I was at the architecture firm sketching a proposal for a new housing initiative when I got a message request on social media. From Lindsay. Lindsay Monroe. I stared at it for a long time. My finger hovered over the screen. Curiosity won. Her message was short. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. But I wanted to say I'm sorry. I was scared, stupid, and selfish. And you didn't deserve what happened. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here. I didn't respond. Not because I hated her. I didn't. But I had nothing to say. There was no war left to fight. No insult to return. Her apology, whether sincere or guilt-ridden, didn't require a response. I already had my closure. What surprised me more was the letter I received in the mail a week later. Handwritten. No return address. It was from Tyler. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't even really a letter. Just a few lines, like he'd struggled to finish it. I used to think love was a feeling. Now I know it's a choice. And I didn't choose you when it mattered. I've regretted that every day. I hope you're living the life you deserve. I'm learning how to be okay with watching it from afar. I folded the letter and tucked it into the back of my old wedding photo album. Not as a keepsake, but as a reminder of where I came from and how far I'd come. One afternoon in early fall, I walked Ellie to her dance class. We sat in the car together, her tiny hands clinging to her sparkly backpack. Do you miss being married to someone else? She asked suddenly. I looked at her, startled. What makes you ask that, sweetie? She shrugged. You're gonna marry Dad, right? I wonder if it feels weird. I smiled and brushed her curly hair back. It doesn't feel weird. Because what I feel now is something I never really had before, peace. Love that doesn't hurt. She thought about it. Then said, okay. Just checking. Kids are funny like that. They ask the hard questions with complete innocence. But somehow, their timing is always right. Later that night, as Ryan tucked her in and I cleaned up dinner, I stood in the doorway and watched them. Ellie giggled at something he whispered in her ear, and then she curled up with her stuffed panda and fell asleep instantly. It hit me then, this was my family. It didn't look like what I once imagined, but it was mine. It was built, not inherited. Grown from wreckage into something whole. And the most surprising part? I wasn't bitter. Not about the marriage. Not about Lindsay. Not even about the years I lost trying to make a one-sided partnership work. Because if those years hadn't happened, I wouldn't be who I am now. I wouldn't be with Ryan. I wouldn't know what kind of strength lives inside a woman who's been abandoned, humiliated, and lied to, and still stands up straighter than ever before. A few months later, I received an invitation to a fundraiser gala for the local women's shelter. I'd done architectural consulting for them, helping design a new transitional housing wing. I hadn't planned on attending. But something nudged me. Maybe it was closure. Maybe it was pride. That night, I walked into the ballroom wearing a sleek black dress and heels that made me almost 6 feet tall. I wasn't there for anyone but me. The night went smoothly through champagne, speeches, charity auctions. And then I saw him. Tyler. He stood near the back, holding a drink, staring at me like he wasn't sure if I was real or just a ghost from a past he hadn't buried properly. We locked eyes. He didn't approach. And I didn't either. But I gave him a nod. Nod of forgiveness. Nod of invitation. A nod that said, I see you. I survived you. And I've moved on. He returned the gesture, his face unreadable. Then he turned away. And that was it. I left the gala early. Walked out into the cool night air, the stars sharp and quiet overhead. Ryan was waiting in the car. Good night, he asked. Perfect, I said. And I meant it. Because even though the story had started with betrayal, humiliation, and loss, it was no longer a story about what was taken from me. It was a story about what I chose to reclaim. The first night it really hit me, deeply hit me that I was free. I was standing barefoot in the kitchen with flour on my hands and Ella Fitzgerald playing in the background. Ryan was leaning against the counter, sleeves rolled up, slicing strawberries for the crepes Ellie had promised to teach me. And I just smiled. Not the polite kind of smile you give at work or the reflexive one when someone tells you look tired. No. This was the kind of smile that came from someplace quiet and deep and long forgotten. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for disappointment. I wasn't wondering what mood Tyler would be in when he walked through the door. I wasn't walking on emotional eggshells. I was home. Ryan looked over, and he must have noticed something in my expression. What? He asked. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and shook my head. Nothing. Just. I didn't know it could be like this. He smiled, came over, and kissed my forehead. It can. And it will. Every day if I have anything to say about it. And that's when I knew I hadn't just escaped something toxic, I had walked into something honest. But healing isn't always linear. The next morning, I opened an email from the architecture firm's HR department. They wanted me to consider a promotion, Director of Design Strategy. It was the kind of role I'd worked toward for years. But it would mean longer hours, more travel, and less time at home. I sat with it. 4 days. Tyler would have told me to take it immediately. Said it looked good on a resume. Probably used it at dinner parties to flex my accomplishments like accessories. Ryan just asked me one thing, will it make you feel fulfilled, or just important? That question stayed with me. The old me would have jumped at the chance to prove herself. To be seen. To be applauded. But this version of me, the Maria who had stitched her own soul back together, wanted something else. Balance. Purpose. Presence. I said no. Instead, I proposed something different, a part-time consulting position that allowed me to lead certain projects without sacrificing time with Ryan and Ellie. To my surprise, the firm agreed. They said they trusted my instincts. That I'd earned it. That same week, Jace called. Lindsay moved again, he said. Back to California. Left Miles with her mom. Said she needed space. He sounded tired. She's not stable, he added. But I'm working on getting full custody. I just thought you should know. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. You're doing more for that child than either of them did for you, I said. He's lucky to have you. Jace let out a breath. Sometimes I wonder if all of this happened for a reason. If getting tangled up in their mess led me to something better. It did, I replied softly. Even if it wasn't what we thought we wanted. He went quiet for a while, then said, "Thank you for pushing me to tell the truth." That day changed everything. After the call, I sat on the porch and watched the sunset slide down over Charleston like spilled honey. The light hit the old oak tree in the yard just right, casting long, graceful shadows over the grass. I remembered the last sunset I'd watched with Tyler. It had been during a vacation in Asheville. We'd sat on the cabin porch, drinking wine in silence, both pretending we weren't already gone inside. I had thought the silence was peaceful. Now I knew, it had been the silence of disconnection. What I had with Ryan was different. When we sat in silence, it was full. Not empty. Like two instruments tuned to the same key. That weekend, we took Ellie to a fall festival. There were hayrides and cider stands and a pumpkin patch where she insisted on picking the ugliest one because nobody ever wants the crooked ones. She made me laugh so hard I cried. And somewhere between the caramel apples and the Ferris wheel, Ryan reached for my hand and said, "Let's do something next spring. Something small. Just us. Just the people who matter." I didn't need to ask what he meant. "Like a wedding?" I teased. He grinned. "Only if you say yes." I didn't hesitate. Yes. Not because I was trying to replace the past. But because I had finally made peace with it. Because I wasn't walking into a new chapter with baggage, I was walking in with wisdom. The invitations were handwritten. The guest list was short. Just close friends. A few family members. Jace, too. Because without him, the truth might have stayed buried. We planned it for late April, in the backyard, under string lights and soft music. The dress? Simple. The food? Southern and homemade. And when Ellie stood up with her sparkly shoes and her carefully memorized reading, I felt a lump rise in my throat. "You don't need to be born to someone to love them like family," she said. "You just have to choose them. And they have to choose you back." Ryan reached for my hand. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Because everything that mattered had already been said. This wasn't the wedding I imagined when I was 25, staring at bridal magazines and wondering what my life would look like in 10 years. This was better. Because it wasn't about show. It was about substance. It was about me. The morning of our wedding, I woke up before the sun. I padded quietly into the kitchen, wrapped in a silk robe, and made a pot of coffee. Ryan was still asleep, and Ellie had fallen asleep on the couch the night before, guarding the dress, she said. She didn't want anything bad to happen to it, especially not Theo chewing the lace, which he had tried once already. I stood at the window, coffee warming my hands, watching the light creep over the trees. No nerves. No second guessing. Just a strange, deep peace in my chest. I thought back to my first wedding, how different it had been. Lavish venue. 30 tables. A menu with 5 entrees and no soul. I remember standing in front of the mirror in that ivory dress, makeup perfectly done, and thinking, this doesn't feel like me. But maybe that's what love is, becoming someone who fits into someone else's life. How wrong I was. Love shouldn't shrink you. Love shouldn't twist you into something you barely recognize in the mirror. Love, real love, gives you room to breathe. To grow. To laugh without asking permission. Ryan knew me. All of me. And he loved me anyway. When he stepped into the doorway that morning, barefoot, hair tousled, and holding a steaming mug in each hand, he looked at me like I was the sunrise itself. "I was hoping I'd find you here," he said, handing me a cup. "I couldn't sleep," I admitted. "Cold feet," he teased. I shook my head, smiling. "Warm feet. Steady heart." He leaned in and kissed my forehead. "You've never looked more sure." And I was. By noon, our backyard was strung with lights, soft fabric, and laughter. Jace arrived early, wearing a navy suit and holding a gift bag with one hand and a sleepy toddler with the other, Miles. I knelt down as Miles rubbed his eyes. "Hi there," I said gently. Jace smiled. "He's shy at first, but once you hand him something sweet, he's your best friend." I looked at the boy's small face, soft curls, and curious brown eyes. The child born of betrayal, but raised in truth. He didn't know the story that surrounded his birth. He didn't know that he once stood at the center of a tangled mess of lies. He just knew Jace. His dad. The man who chose him. And that's what mattered. "You've done a good job," I told Jace as he gently rocked Miles. "Really?" He looked at me, eyes shining. I learned from someone brave enough to speak up when no one else did. I didn't need him to say more. The moment said everything. Guests began to trickle in. Ellie flitted between them like a tiny hostess, showing off the lemonade table and making sure the napkins matched the flowers. And then, it was time. I stood beneath the arbor we built together, Ryan and I. Our names etched into the base, carved in his handwriting. He looked at me with that familiar calm, the kind of gaze that told me we were standing on solid ground. No illusions. No secrets. No unfinished sentences. Just us. When the officiant asked if we had prepared vows, I shook my head. I didn't write anything down, I began. Because the truth doesn't need rehearsal. Ryan smiled. I spent years trying to be the perfect wife in a marriage built on cracks. I held things together with hope and silence, and it broke me in ways I didn't even realize until I had nothing left to prove. I paused. Took a breath. But then you came back into my life, not to rescue me, but to remind me that I was never the problem. You didn't try to change me. You didn't ask me to shrink. You simply saw me. And that gave me the courage to rebuild everything that had been stolen. I looked into his eyes. I don't need a fairy tale. I just want a life where I can be honest, even when it's hard. Where we speak truth, even when it's messy. And where love feels like peace, not pressure. There wasn't a dry eye in the yard, not even Jace, who had discreetly pulled out a handkerchief. Ryan took my hands. I used to think the best love stories started with fireworks, he said. But I know better now. The best ones start with stillness. With two people who've been through storms and still choose each other, day after day. He kissed my hands. I choose you, Maria. Not because I need you, but because I see you. And every day, I want to build this life with you, with our messy mornings and mismatched socks and backyard dinners. I want the quiet with you. We exchanged rings. And when the officiant finally said, "You may kiss the bride," Ryan pulled me in slowly, like he wasn't just kissing a wife, he was kissing the end of a long road and the beginning of everything beautiful. Applause followed. Ellie squealed and ran up to hug us both. The reception was simple. Laughter under string lights. Pasta and cornbread. A small chocolate cake that Ellie helped bake, lopsided and too sweet, but perfect. At one point during the night, I sat on the porch steps alone, watching the light bugs flicker. Jace joined me. "I'm not sure if you know," he said, "but Lindsay checked herself into therapy last month. Long-term inpatient." I turned to him, surprised. "Really?" "Yeah. Her mom told me. Said she finally admitted she needed help." I was quiet for a moment. "She hurt a lot of people," I said. "She did," he agreed. "But maybe this is her first step toward not hurting anyone else." I nodded. Not out of forgiveness. But acceptance. Not every ending comes with an apology. Sometimes the only closure you get is peace. And I'd found mine. Later that night, Ryan and I danced barefoot in the grass. No music, just the wind and the distant hum of conversation. He pulled me close and whispered, if I could go back in time and do everything differently. I wouldn't. Because all of it brought us here. I rested my head on his chest. I wouldn't change a thing either. Because even the most painful chapters had a purpose. They led me here. To a love I never had to earn. To a home I didn't have to beg for. To a man who didn't choose me as an option, but as a beginning. A few weeks after the wedding, I found myself in my old storage unit, sorting through boxes I hadn't touched since the divorce. I didn't go there looking for anything. I think I just needed to see the past one last time to remind myself how far I'd come. The boxes were labeled in Tyler's handwriting. Kitchen, fragile. Guest room. Maria, office. I opened the one marked office and inside were blueprints, journals, college notes, and, tucked at the bottom, a scrapbook from our first year of marriage. Receipts from our honeymoon. A movie ticket stub. A pressed flower between pages from a trip we'd taken to Asheville. I held it in my hands, not with longing, but with quiet gratitude. That chapter taught me everything. About survival. About letting go. About how real strength isn't found in holding on, it's in knowing when to walk away. I closed the scrapbook and placed it back in the box. I didn't need to burn it. I didn't need to throw it away. The past didn't scare me anymore. Because I wasn't defined by who hurt me. I was defined by what I did after the hurt. Back home, Ryan was on the patio with Theo curled at his feet and Ellie dancing in the grass with a ribbon wand like she was auditioning for the Olympics. That sight, their laughter, the way the breeze tugged at Ryan's hair, the way Theo twitched in his sleep from dreams of tennis balls, that was my real life. That was my forever. Later that evening, as the sun slipped behind the trees, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something told me I should. Hello? Maria? My stomach tensed at the sound. It was Tyler. I stepped inside and closed the sliding door. Tyler, I said cautiously. I didn't mean to bother you, he began. I heard you got married. I wanted to say, congratulations. There was a pause. An awkward silence that used to be so familiar. But now? It felt like noise from another life. Thank you, I said simply. I've been in therapy, he added. Trying to understand how I ended up where I did. Why I let so much slip through my fingers. I waited. I was angry at you for walking away so cleanly, he admitted. I thought it meant you didn't care. But now I see it was the only way you could survive. I took a breath. I did care, Tyler. For a long time. But caring for someone else doesn't mean you stop caring for yourself. He was quiet again. I lost something good, he finally said. But I'm glad someone else found it. And treated it right. There it was. The closure he never gave me in the courtroom. The apology that came years late. But oddly, right on time. Take care of yourself, I said. Truly. You too, he replied. Goodbye, Maria. I hung up. And I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't feel anything except light. That night, Ryan and I sat in the garden. Lavender bloomed around us, the scent calming and sweet. Ellie had fallen asleep early, and the world was quiet again. I turned to him. You know, people keep saying I got my revenge. He smiled, leaning back. Did you? I thought about it. About Lindsay's fake fairy tale crumbling under truth. About Tyler losing everything he thought was irreplaceable. About Jace stepping into fatherhood with strength and compassion. About the day I showed up, not to ruin a party, but to reveal a lie. And about the life I had now. Full of love, clarity, and grace. No, I said. This was never about revenge. It was about reclaiming my voice. Ryan looked at me with that steady gaze I'd come to love. And you did, he said. You really did. As the wind moved through the garden, and the stars blinked above us like quiet witnesses, I leaned into his shoulder. Because this wasn't a love story born from vengeance. It was born from truth. The truth that healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, steady, and made of ordinary moments that stitch your soul back together, one decision at a time. And sometimes, the best revenge is living beautifully, honestly, and never looking back. Some betrayals break us. Others wake us up. This wasn't a story about revenge. This was a story about choosing peace over punishment, truth over performance, and learning that the strongest thing you can do is walk away, head high, heart whole. Have you ever had to face betrayal with courage and still choose healing over hate? Share your story in the comments. And if you found strength in Maria's journey, don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Echoes, where every story reminds you that the truth always finds its way home.